Good morning, everybody. Welcome to today's Overview and Scrutiny Management Committee. Item 1, Introduction and Membership of Committee. I'd like to invite members of the committee to introduce themselves and the panels that they chair, please.
Good morning, Jill Lawson, Chair of Health and Adult Scrutiny.
Good morning, Councillor Andrew Cooper. I'm the Chair of the Environment and Climate Change Panel.
Thank you. And we've got apologies from Councillor Ali and Councillor Amin. On introductions, unfortunately for agenda item 7, Strategic Intelligence Assessment and Kirklees Communities Partnership Plan, we have a number of key partners who attend, but unfortunately the police are not able to attend today. So given Scrutiny's role and the need to be able to engage and ask questions of all our key partners and the data that we collectively hold, I would like to suggest that we defer the item of item 7 so that we can have a fuller discussion and ensure that we've got full participation for the Community Safety Partnerships outcome. So I'd like to recommend that we defer until the next meeting in May. So I propose that. Would anybody like to second that?
I'll second it.
We're all in agreement with that? Thank you. Item 2, minutes of the previous meeting. These are submitted for approval as a correct record. I'd like to move them. Will you second it?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Councillor Cooper. Move show of hands. Thank you. Item 3, interest. Does any member have any interest they wish to disclose? If they do, if you complete the relevant paperwork. Item 4, admission of the public. This is a meeting open to the public and is being webcast live. The recording will also be available to view after the meeting on the Council's website. All items will be considered in public session. Item 5, deputations and petitions. We have none received. Item 6, public question time. No questions have been received. So we move to item 8, corporate financial management, quarter 3 report 24-25. We've got Councillor Turner, portfolio holder, and Kevin Mulvaney, the Service Director of Finance. I'd like to invite Councillor Turner to make an introduction, please.
Chair, thank you. As members will see that this is quarter 3 and they will see there's been a positive movement in our spending position at the moment. Kevin will go through the details and answer any questions.
Thanks, Councillor Turner. So overall, on the quarter 3 general fund revenue position, it was the projected overspend 9.9 million, which was in line with the quarter 2 position. But as members will see in the main report, there's some ups and downs between the various directorates. So taking each of those in turn, and I'll try to explain some of the movements between the 2 quarters. So children's and families are now projected at 5.8 million, which is broadly £1 million higher than the quarter 2 position. And that really is being driven by the costs of looked after children and other parenting budgets. Within adult social care, their position is slightly worse at 0.7 million, worse at 2.785 million overspend. And there are a number of variations, ups and downs in there. We've got additional staffing savings of 600,000 between the 2 quarters, as well as savings within the Community Plus function of 400,000. But they're being offset by additional costs within self-directed support and commissioning of 1.1 million and residential and nursing care placements of just under £600,000. Within the Place Directorate, that position has worsened by £1 million, but again, a number of things are affecting that, given the diverse nature of that directorate. We've brought into the quarter 3 position a projected overspend on the adverse weather budget of £1.5 million, and this hadn't been reflected in quarter 2. And there are additional pressures due to the number and the cost of cases of home to school transport of a further 800,000. But there are reductions in the pressures within highways and waste of just over 1 million to bring the overall variation within place down to 8.4 million. The two areas where there are savings in the position between quarter 3 and quarter 2 are central and corporate. So within corporate, there are a couple of one-off items. There's a 465,000 business rates refund due to a revaluation, mainly in culture and visitor economy. And most of that is backdated for a number of years. There's also a 300,000 saving within the insurance fund. Again, that's a one-off saving. There's ongoing savings within staffing across various enabling services of a further 225,000. And within catering, cleaning and caretaking, there's an extra 470,000 of additional income anticipated in year. And within the central budget, which has improved by 1.4 million, 500,000 of that is slippage in the capital plan, so savings in financing costs. 700,000 is a confirmation that we received in the quarter from government that they would redistribute the business rates levy surplus that's held nationally. So we weren't aware of that at quarter 2. They confirmed that as part of the settlement. And then there's a 200,000 reduction in the projection that we'd need for inflation in 24/5. We're still holding the use of reserves at 3 million to bring the overall position down to 9.9. On the general fund as a whole, I do expect that to improve by outturn. Don't think it will be 9.9, it will be lower, and we're working through that. On the position on the HRA, again, that's an improving position where they were projecting 2.9 million overspend at quarter 2. That's now down to 1.9 overspend at quarter 3. There are reductions in the costs of repairs and maintenance between the 2 quarters, and further staffing savings, particularly in housing management, which are driving that £1 million reduction in the overspend. And again, on the HRA, I think that overspend will come down at outturn. The position on the DSG remains as quarter 2, in that it's projected to have a year-end overspend of £20 million and a DSG deficit, cumulative deficit of £65 million by year-end. And then on capital, members will be aware we constantly revise the capital plan budget to reflect slippage. So we've now slipped a further 33 million between the 2 quarters from the budget, which stood at £202 million for the year, down to £169 million. That money just gets slipped into future years, so we haven't taken it out of the capital plan. And 169 million is probably certainly more reflective of our spend. The previous 2 years we'd spent just under 150 million as a council on capital. And when we'd written this quarter 3 report, the multi-year capital plan was £1.4 million, which I think was consistent to what we'd reported to members as part of the budget. Although I'm conscious that obviously the budget amendments that were approved did make some adjustments to that capital plan, which we will show at outturn. I think that's it from me, Councillor. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from committee members? Councillor Cooper.
So looking through the report and looking at some of the variances there's quite a lot of reds and quite a lot of reds which are showing that matters are worse than we expected going forward. I'm just wondering if more generally, so I looked at education psychology, and there's nearly a £500,000 variance there, and not a lot of optimism in the comments that we're going to be able to deal with that. So I'm just wondering if, going forward, if our projections on spend are going to be less optimistic, if you like, and obviously we'll do actions to try and keep within budget, but whether there is a new approach which means that you would expect less overspends going forward, more greens, because you're being more optimistic.
Okay, thank you. I think if we look into 25/6, in terms of the budget, we've made a decision to try and fund as many of these overspends, particularly the ones around volume, looked after children, adult social care, etc. So we've tried to put as much money as we can into the budget to deal with those pressures next year, and I think we've probably put over £50 million in of money to fund pressures. So I would expect the number of variations that have been reported across the various directorates to be lower next year. I'm sure there will still be some.
Sure.
Absolutely. There will be some areas that will still remain of concern. So I would expect that the budget has dealt with a lot of the issues that members are seeing this year, and so I hope that answers that. If you a specific one on educational psychology.
Well, the education psychology one. I'll look at it, and you look at how they're going to deal with the issue, and they're saying, well, we're not having any success at getting education psychologists. They're like rocking horse do. You just can't find them. There's not a lot of them around.
So what they've done there this year, they have overspent that budget, as you can see in the report, and again that's to try and speed up the care plans and improve that performance, and the service are doing that this year. Next year's budget does put some more money into educational psychology as well, so it's part of that process of trying to reduce overspends.
So paying for locums, which is, I'm guessing that's where a lot of that money is going to go, which is going to cost more money than having somebody in-house, and so those are one of the areas we don't deliberately hold those vacancies. They are, they do try and recruit them all the time, so it's not a conscious decision to hold those vacancies in that area. And it'll take a long time to train an education psychologist, so there
probably will
just magic up, is it?
Yeah, you're right. There probably will be some locums next year, but hopefully with the additional money we've put in, we won't be seeing an overspend.
Right. And another question, really. It's one of the things that is hitting us this week is the employers' national insurance rises, and I'm wondering about the knock-on impact of that in terms of adult health and social care budgets. Some of the providers that we're working with, quality providers, and just wondering whether we've got a real clear understanding about that, and about what the impact might be, and what the knock-on impact might be on the adult health and social care budgets.
Okay, thank you. So the Exec Director for Adults is in negotiation with the care providers to agree fee uplift rates. I don't think those have been formally agreed yet, but those rates should reflect the money that we've put in to help fund the cost increases for NI for those care providers.
Councillor Turner.
Just to follow up on that, of course, this doesn't come in until Sunday, so we can estimate the impact at the moment. We actually need to see it in the ground, so I think we need to see the first quarter of next financial year and see how that works out. And as you rightly say, some of the care sector is under enormous pressure at the moment, but no doubt they'll work their way through it. But I think we need to give it a quarter, see how it actually pans out. Let's not guess what it may or may not be. Let's see what actually happens. Because, of course, quite rightly, there's the uplift in minimum wage as well, which obviously impacts them, which obviously is the right thing to do, but obviously does have an impact. And, of course, without mentioning things, the world's a little bit turbulent at this moment anyway, so we'll have to wait and see what happens over the next 3 months anyway.
So just in general terms, based on the ongoing financial pressures, how does the Council plan to balance the need for fiscal sustainability with the delivery of essential services, in particular areas experiencing high demand like children's services and adult social care?
Thanks. So in terms of the sustainability angle, as a reference to Councillor Cooper, the budget makes specific provision for those, significant additional provision for those demand budgets within looked after children and adult social care. So I think we certainly should be covered off okay in 25-26 in those areas. And then obviously when we update the medium-term plan, which will be brought to Cabinet in probably September, we'll reflect our projections of the next 3, 4, 5 years within that document. In terms of trying to sort of balance the overall budget next year, each directorate have got their own specific savings plans which were agreed as part of the budget process. So we will track those on a quarterly basis through Cabinet. And as Councillor Turner referenced, we'll still be holding a tight rein on spend and vacancy management in the first quarter until I get sight of that first quarter report and position. We will keep tight control on spend there.
I think, sorry, Steve Austin, Chief Exec, just for those watching at home. I think the other part for me is also linking the sustainability to the new council plan. So we've set out in that council plan some additional priorities, getting the basics right. Kevin said putting over 51 million into services to make sure those vacancies that have remained vacant and that we are keeping, we can fill and we can get on to delivering those core services that residents rely on. Clearly the big spenders of money are adults and children, and I'll not repeat things what colleagues have said, but actually I think for us it's the rest of the council that we're also interested in. So we just need to get through Q1 to make sure there's nothing that's come out of the woodwork since we set the budget. And if that is the place, then we'll be starting to release more vacancies. We'll start to fill posts. We'll start to remove the spending freeze that's been in place so that we're in a much more manageable and sustainable position. This budget that you all just agreed, or some of you agreed, that got agreed by the council one way or another, that got agreed by the council one way or the other, put a lot of money into services that it has been needing for quite some time. And I think we feel more confident going forward. Just on the savings, if you compare those up for the last couple of years, 25-26 has got £11 million of new savings. Previous year had 35 million of new savings. So you can, a lot lower scale of change and disruption to the organisation that we've seen in previous years, which again links back to the delivering the basics and getting on with stuff for all our residents. So I think we feel more confident in the way forward and going forward. We just have to get on with it now, and that's the task at hand. And obviously we'll be coming back to keep Scrutiny updated on those positions as we go throughout the year.
Thank you, Steve. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Lawson.
Thank you, Chair. I note from the report that is on the Parks and Green Spaces that there are 34 full-time equivalent posts that actually have been served with their redundancy notices. How many of those staff will actually be redeployed into other services? And are they just coming from the parks, or is it across the whole of sort of the green space team as well?
Can I come back to you with the specifics on the redundancies, Councillor Lawson? Thanks.
Can I just add that where there are suitable vacancies within the organisation, those people will be considered for those suitable vacancies. We do everything we can to mitigate any redundancies, and as I said, where there is a vacancy in other parts of the organisation, we will encourage existing staff to apply for those posts.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. I was aware that there was a very robust redeployment thing for staff, because obviously staff from the customer services went into various things. I know with like sort of the blue badge scheme, etc. Is I also what is you talk about is on the winter pressures. I know in the last budget an extra, I think it was 500,000 was actually done, but it does actually show that in this thing that nearly 500,000 was obviously used, with obviously going from sort of, I'd say, from the is in January and all the things there. Are there contingency plans that obviously, if we end up with the same sort of weather that we had for longer periods, to actually cover that? Because a lot of things people wanted was to be able to have the roads gritted, access to grit bins and various things.
So there is a budget, as you said, for next year's winter pressures. Don't forget that doesn't just cover things like gritting, it covers things like fallen trees, floods and all those other things that fall into those pressures at winter. If we were in a position where we had a bad winter and we had to spend more money, of course we would continue to grit the roads. We would look for that savings or money to come out of reserves to do that. But we will always grit the priority routes will always be gritted, no matter how overspent we are, because that's our moral and legal obligation to keep those primary routes open. We would address that at the time, but there will always be money to keep those primary routes open. The extras may be the ones that come under pressure, but the primary routes will always be gritted, no matter how pressured the budget is.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. The reason I raised that is because there are concerns from our residents, and obviously I feel that we need to get out into the open that we will continue with the gritting of the actual priority routes, and if we can, the side roads, etc. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? If not, I'd like to thank Kevin for attending, Councillor Turner. Note the report will continue to be submitted to the committee on a regular basis, and the lead members will pick up any items within their remit of the panel that may require further scrutiny, and also request that additional information be provided for members in respect of the green space posts and in respect of redeployment of other posts within the Parks and Green Spaces Department. Thank you. Item 9, Council Plan and Performance Update Quarter 3 Report for 24-25. We've got Mike Henry, Head of Data and Insight, to present the report.
Thank you. Good morning. So the Quarter 3 24-25 Council Plan and Performance Update Report provides an update on progress against the 24-25 Council Plan and an update against the Council's key measures for 24-25, reflecting the Council's position at the end of December 2024. The first section of the report provides details on council activity and delivery against the 4 priorities within the 24-25 Council Plan, and the second section of the report provides the latest data against the Council's key measures for 24-25. A summary of the direction of travel against both demand and performance measures can be found on page 9 of the report. Where available, benchmarking data has been included within the report, and that provides a comparison with regional and national rates, helping to contextualise our local demand and performance trends. We welcome any feedback or questions from members of the committee on the content and the format of the report.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from panel members? So the report highlights a number of risks, including the ongoing financial pressures across various services. How is the Council assessing and mitigating the risks associated with potential overspends in key service areas such as adults and children's services, public health, and what contingency plans are in place to address any further risks of service delivery?
I think as part of the Council's regular monitoring arrangements, where the Council will consider both finance, performance and risk collectively, we've got a keen grip on exactly what's going on across those 3 areas as well. So looking through those kind of different lenses enables the Council to kind of manage effectively and tight control and grips over what's going on across all 3 areas, rather than some of the challenges we'd had in the past where we'd looked at some of those things in isolation. So I think that triangulation of that information gets the council a good grip on those areas.
Anybody else? Okay, no other questions, comments? Okay, thank you. Thank you for your attendance and for the update. And we know that these reports will continue to be submitted to the committee on a regular basis, and that lead members will pick up any items within the remit of their panel that may require further scrutiny. Thank you. Corporate risk, quarter 3 report 24-25. We've got Alice Carruthers, Senior Finance Officer, to present this one.
Hello, thank you, Chair. In line with the previous paper, so this is the Q3 corporate risk report, and it reflects the position as at the end of December. The first page just summarised changes that were seen during the quarter. So just to point out, there's a risk related to the new CQC inspection regime and the process and outcome of that. Obviously, we have now submitted pre-inspection packs and data, and we've received notification of the visit in May, so the risk will be updated to reflect the latest position, reflecting that. The budget monitoring and management risk was also updated to reflect the increased certainty of a budget overspend position, but also the robustness of the response in place to manage that overspend position, and that was reflected in the change in the risk score. The following two summary pages just highlight the scores of all of the corporate risks that are within the pack. So red rated risks cover financial sustainability, including both in-year and medium-term outlook and revenue and capital expenditure. Send provision, incorporating EHCP assessments, alternative provision, the use of out-of-area placements, delivery of safety valve commitments, they're all included within the send risk. We include homelessness, including increased demand for temporary accommodation, and our availability of appropriate housing solutions to meet needs. We include within one of our risks the safety and quality of our residential housing portfolio. So this reflects the regulatory judgment that was received from the Regulator of Social Housing, the activity that's underway to meet the new consumer standards and the Building Safety Act amendments post-Grenfell. We also cover off council-wide the risk of poor outcomes, be that around delivery time, quality or budget as a result of weak contract management practices. We include cybersecurity, and that risk remains elevated, reflecting the continued and ongoing threat that the local authority faces. And we have people management risk included there, which addresses some of the specific capacity and capability risks that are across the council and the steps that we've got in place to manage and address those. So I'd invite Scrutiny to comment on whether there are risks that they would expect to see included within this report, that through their own work that they've been made aware of, and also request that Scrutiny chairs consider the corporate risk report and possibly the underlying risk registers that underpin the corporate level report in the course of developing their programme of work for this year. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments from committee members? Councillor Cooper.
So I noted the corporate governance failure element here, and looking at it, and it says the external auditor's report identifies some concerns as regards decision making, although this is based on a small sample. And I just wonder, have members had sight of that? I don't recall seeing this external auditor's report on governance. I'm just wondering if...
Gone to audit committee?
Yeah, sure, fine. I just wonder if you could just... What were the main areas that they brought up with regard to our decision making and their concerns? What was that? I just don't recall it. So
it's in audit committee's list of things. It was about. Shall I say we had a difference of opinion with our auditors on this, and remember that the auditor's report is a year behind, so it wasn't 24-25, it was 23-4.
Okay.
And it was their perspective of the decision making in that year about the KSDL and the complexity of KSDL for that report issued in that year. We had said Yes, but if you look at background papers, it's all spelled out why we've got to that position and why the council is taking that approach going forward. They did acknowledge that, but asked us to reflect, which was all built into the management agreement of the action. So there was a couple of different of opinions on stuff, which, you know, that's all part of their process to come forward and identify stuff to us, and we have a think about that. But that's why in the report, in the commentary, it talks about in some isolated kind of examples, because we didn't think that fairly represents decision making as a whole. And I think there are always examples, and we should not sit back and say we're perfect on everything. There are always examples that we can think, how was that presented? Should that be presented slightly differently? So that's kind of why it's in there, is that to make sure that you constantly test yourself against, could we present that differently? Could we make that a bit more open and transparent? How do we do that kind of stuff?
Thanks for that. That was the main thing that I noticed.
Can I just come in? And I know this sounds ever so complicated, but I just want to say it. So between the three parts of the council that operate, well, 4, but 3 in this case, risk is a really complicated feature. So the executive are responsible for managing the risks. Scrutiny are responsible for holding executive to account on the management of those risks. And audit are responsible for reviewing, so audit committee in particular, reviewing the system of managing risks. Now, audit's difficult role is that they can't then look at the system without looking at what those risks were and asking those questions. But then that kind of feels like it's cutting across what scrutiny's role is. So we are replicating this report or this list when the next time we go to audit committee, because they've said, can we have the fuller list? So there is a little chance of duplication, but we are clear and audit are clear where the lines sit. So the only reason they will be reviewing the risks is to understand, does the system work? Are the right things coming to the top level, strategic level discussion? But it does also rely on, and I'm not saying you're not, but it also relies on scrutiny holding the executive to account on those risks as well, as you've just done. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Just, if I may, just looking at some of the external factors, such as changes in government funding, regulations or policies could present risks to the Council's ability to meet strategic objectives. With the potential for changes in government funding, national policies, whatever it may be, how is the Council managing the risks related to external funding and regulatory changes, and what contingency plans are in place to minimise any negative impacts on potential service delivery?
We encourage our individual services and directorates to consider horizon scanning activity, so to really to look forward at where regulatory change may come, where government policy may change, and to make sure we are undertaking, the right level of engagement with those bodies or with our peers to make sure we are prepared for that and can plan ahead. And in terms of the financial planning of changes such as that will be factored into the work that is done through the budget planning process.
Councillor Cooper.
So on external factors, we've had a recent change on welfare benefits, reduction in funding there. And so that you'd expect that would have an impact on council services and on council budgets, actually, because you look at the money that we've got allocated for things like hardship funds and the services that we provide. Have we reassessed our risks on the basis of those changes to government policy?
In the process of compiling the risk registers for Q4, that's something that we're looking at, and the recent changes to national insurance and to benefits are being factored in there. So we're looking at, for instance, from a client side, we've touched on this from a provider side in terms of adult social care, the affordability of some of the plans that we're putting in place, and we're looking at our bad debt provision and how that might be impacted if we have challenges around affordability. So that's certainly something that at a service level, specific services are addressing from that point of view. Don't know if you've got further.
And of course, some is the worry for individuals that may not have actually any changes yet anyway, because some of the changes don't come in for another year and a bit. So it's also making sure people understand what is my current position and where can that change, and we point them to either advice lines or partners or third sector bodies that are doing that work with groups at the moment, and encouraging people, anybody who's got difficulties, get in touch and use us or use other bodies to be that kind of signposter for those people who are struggling. Because we can't provide everything, but we can certainly work with our partners to be able to deliver a lot of that stuff. So, yeah, I think it's also trying to draw out the myth from fact, because we recognise there will be a lot of people worried with the media coverage that happens, not all of which are happening now and could be a concern or might not be a concern going forward.
Any other questions or comments? No? If not, thank you, Alice, for your attendance. Thank you, Steve, also for clarifying the role of the executive, corporate governance and audit, and scrutiny, and how all that works. It can be complicated, it can be duplications, and it's about understanding our roles and how we can be effective in that. We also know that these reports will continue to be submitted to the committee on a regular basis, and that lead members will pick up any items within their remit that the panel may feel requires further scrutiny. Thank you. Item 11, Local Government Association Corporate Peer Challenge Action Plan. Councillor Patterson, make the introduction, and then Stephen will be able to do the presentation afterwards, if that's okay.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Only very briefly, I'm really pleased to present this report and action plan to you today. I really feel it was a good process. We were thoroughly investigated, if I may say that, and we gave, I think, a very good response when the team were here. I think they very accurately portrayed what we were trying to say to them and what we were saying to them. They didn't really come up with any surprises that we didn't know, where we were perhaps not performing as well as we would have liked to have done. But I'm also pleased that since that time, there have been many changes anyway that have addressed some of their concerns. And then, of course, the action plan here addresses those concerns even further. So I'll be really pleased to hear what the panel have to say about the action plan, what they could potentially add to that. So I'll be really pleased to hear what you have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Lawson and I also had a briefing and a conversation relating to this previously, which has fed into it as well. So, Stephen.
Thank you. I'm sharing some slides, so they should be coming up soon. Thank you. As committee members are aware, in November last year, Local Government Association visited us, and as the leaders just said, there were extensive interviews with lots of members of staff and also elected members. The feedback report resulting from that visit was published on the council's website in March this year, so that's publicly available and everybody can look at that. The outcomes, as the leaders just said, were overall very positive, including on our ambitions and ability to deliver on those ambitions. But as is normal with a peer challenge, they've of course provided some recommendations for next steps. We are required by the LJ to publish an action plan by the end of April, and we've published that for the Cabinet meeting next week. That's available in the Cabinet papers, and that's been shared with scrutiny members ahead of this meeting. That action plan will be decided at Cabinet next week, and then will be at Council for noting later in the month. We have, as Councillor Burke has said, met with a couple of the committee members previously for feedback, as well as group leaders, and that has informed some of the actions that we'll be talking through today. I'll just move on from that. That's just summarising the facts that we've had the feedback. So just in terms of some of the key points of feedback, if you look at the cabinet report that's published on the council's website, it summarises all the feedback we've had from OSMC and group leaders. But these are just some of the key points that we've heard. So we've heard about the importance of engaging around our capital programme and regeneration plans, and I think one of the points raised was around how local businesses can benefit from those. Of course, we do some of that, but I think committee members raising the importance of that is helpful. Ensuring our fair share of funding from the combined authority. I think obviously we've spoken in this committee before about the importance of that with changes in devolution and increasing powers at a West Yorkshire level, and having a more consistent voice in the development of clearer asks from Kirklees in those West Yorkshire conversations. Identifying opportunities for the third sector to enhance our transformation activity. I think the third sector is a really important part of delivering the outcomes that we aspire to achieve, and sometimes better placed than the council to deliver activity. Involving members in the development of member training and development. We heard that very, very clearly, and members obviously want to have a voice in shaping that support package. And also the role of scrutiny in monitoring the implementation of key improvement plans like the peer challenge. So all this feedback, we've been passing it back to the lead directors for each of the actions in the peer challenge. I think looking through it, I think it's really relevant to how we implement the actions and how we respond to the recommendations through those. And we've already started to do some of that. So I'm not going to go through all of the actions, but I just want to sort of touch on each of the recommendations and then explain what a couple of the actions that we're doing on each. So the first one's around the council's budget, and the peer team obviously recognising the ongoing financial challenges that are facing local authorities across the country, and we're no different in that sense, but they recognise the fact that we have a plan, and they've essentially raised the importance of that longer term planning. Just looking at the actions around this, a lot of this is stuff that we're already doing in terms of the monitoring the financial reporting and everything that Scrutiny also see. There is an ambition to develop a more detailed budget book, which provides a breakdown of all the service budgets to support greater transparency. I think that's something that's been discussed in this meeting previously as well, and you'll see there's a timescale on there of developing that by August, and also an annual benchmarking exercise to help with identifying further opportunities for transformation and efficiencies. We know that there are other councils that are doing things that we could learn from, other organisations even, maybe beyond local government, that we could learn from. So we definitely want to look into those. The second recommendation was around transformation, and I think recognising that we have had huge successes in transformation, especially in children's and adult social care, and the peer team were quite impressed by that. They want us to do more of it, essentially, and I think that's a really positive recommendation. So in terms of the actions around that, One of the things we know we need to do is where there have been successes in particular areas of the council, communicating those into other teams. There's a wide set of, the council's a large organisation, and sometimes transformation initiatives that have happened in one part of the council can actually have lessons that are relevant for other parts of the council. So we do know we want to do more work to communicate our transformation successes to members and officers. Something that's come up in this in the chamber before at various meetings is around a longer term council plan, and I think the lead has been really clear before that now that we're going to have a longer term financial settlement for local government, we'll be in a position to be able to produce a longer term council plan. One of the actions related to transformation is ensuring that we've got a longer term transformation vision that ties into that longer term plan. The third recommendation is around regeneration, and the team were I think impressed by the scale of our regeneration plans, but wanted us to check, obviously in the context of financial pressures, that they're affordable and viable and deliverable in the current financial context. So we do have an action in there around reviewing the capital programme to make sure we have affordable plans. That's a prudent thing to do, to check in on your plans and to make sure that they are affordable. So we'll be doing that, and we've got a timescale on there to have completed that by September. We're also looking at the total cost of our regeneration plans. So beyond, there's regeneration is not just building the buildings. It's the staff in the buildings. It's the delivering the service from the buildings. It's the implications for those wider services and teams. So we're doing a piece of work to really make sure that we're on top of all of that. Again, it's obviously the prudent thing to do. That's just to highlight some of the actions from that recommendation. Since external funding came up just in the previous discussion, maybe this is still on the same recommendation. I'll just flag that we are looking at how we prioritise our efforts around external funding. There are lots of opportunities out there in terms of external funding. We need to make sure that we're focusing on the ones that are going to benefit our outcomes and our ambitions, and being proactive as well as responsive to the opportunities that are there. Around planning, we know at a national level there's lots of changes planned around planning. So the team recommended that we explore planning in a more expansive and strategic way, and thinking about nationally determined targets. The first action in there is monitoring those national policy changes. One of the proposals in the white paper is more powers for combined authorities around planning. We obviously want to monitor how that develops and ensure we're prepared to benefit from those powers and have the skills and capacity to complement what those changes mean at a West Yorkshire level. Recommendation 5 is around working with business and economic partners. So as part of the visit, the peer team met the various representatives from the private sector, the Chamber of Commerce and so on, and the recommendation was that we work more closely. They want to be more involved in some of our plans. So we are drafting an economic strategy for the district, the inclusive economy strategy, and that will be done in the coming months. We're still in the process of engaging with partners on that, and we'll be bringing that to Cabinet and Council later this year. That will set out the vision and high-level actions for growing the economy and regeneration in the district. We also want to review our economic partnership arrangements. We heard through the peer review that those groups want to be more involved in our plans, we want to make sure we've got the communication mechanisms and the meetings in place and the relationships in place to enable that. And we've also heard that businesses want to connect more with community organisations around volunteering and delivering on their corporate social responsibility ambitions. So the sixth recommendation is around member roles and development. Obviously in the context of recent changes at the council, the team recommended that we have a kind of closer eye on this. Also want to ensure that reports are clear, that members fully understand the decisions that are being taken, and that there is that skills and support package in place so that members and officers are supported to work well together. So there's some work ongoing around updating and improving awareness of the member officer protocol. And we're also looking at the support package, as I've already mentioned, around the skills and support that there is to members. So the action at the bottom there around the member development framework, that will bring together the existing support that there already is for members. As part of that work, we'll identify opportunities for further support, and that will be for new and existing members. Obviously, the needs will be different for each member. But we're all constantly learning, and it's really important that ongoing support is there, not just for the new members. The seventh recommendation, continue to improve performance. So again, the peer team really clear that considerable progress has been made in some service areas, such as in children's services, and committee members will be very familiar with that. They want us to maintain the progress on that, not lose momentum on those improvements, which I think is, again, a really positive recommendation. So there's, including the LGA Corporate Peer Challenge, we have a number of external inspections, and obviously the Regulator for Social Housing, the CQC, SEND, and so on. We want to make sure we've got a clear overview of that, and that we're responding to those recommendations and spotting themes across the different inspections to see if there's stuff we can do across the council to respond to those. Obviously, each individual services already respond to those inspections, but are there things that we could do across the council that will be even more efficient and effective? We're also looking at providing more support and guidance to services around service planning. So we set out our high-level ambitions through the council plan and through various other partnership strategies and other strategies. How are services delivering on the ambitions in those? We have various mechanisms for monitoring that at the moment, but we are hearing that some more service planning guidance would be helpful for individual services. So the last recommendation, and again, I know that this has come up a number of times in the chamber before at various meetings, is around pivoting to a longer-term horizon for key decisions. I've already mentioned the idea of having a longer-term council plan, which is now possible because of the longer-term financial settlement. We are launching an internal culture refresh programme. Actually, that's already launched this week. Our council, which describes the way in which we want to work. It supports the council plan in terms of getting the basics right, focus on customer expectations, how we collaborate with communities, and so on. We recognise that, and this has been increasing the case for a long time, that we can only achieve our aspirations if we work with partners. So we need a longer-term partnership vision as well, and so we're going to revisit that with partners over the coming year. And of course, we want to monitor national changes in policy. think I've touched on the key elements of that as well. So I think the really important thing to say is this is a list of actions that we're committing to, and delivery is already underway on a lot of the actions. So on some of those, we're already almost there, which is really positive, and that's because, as the leader said, we've already been cracking on with some of them. The actions will be monitored over the coming months. The LJ are coming back in September to look at the progress we've made against the action plan, and they will publish a report no later than 12 months following the visit. So people will be able to see how we have responded to the recommendations and actions in there. In advance of that progress review, we want to come back to Scrutiny, and we'll also provide an update to Cabinet on our progress. So we welcome suggestions and comments from OSMC today. The actions will be decided at Cabinet next week. I think what's really helpful to hear from committee members is your views on the delivery of these important things to consider as we're delivering on those actions, how we monitor those, and reporting of those actions over the coming year. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Any questions or comments from committee members? Councillor Cooper.
So a few things occurred, but thanks for the report. Pleased to see that, obviously, I'd mentioned about local and independent businesses, and the focus there was really about keeping more of the Kirklees pound in the Kirklees economy and not filtering out to pay shareholders goodness knows where. And so that's something that I think, it would be a thing for us to have a bit of a core focus on. So when we're talking key businesses, I don't necessarily thinking of, some distant body, but one that's got people who own and manage the businesses within the area. So that's I was pleased to see that was reflected here. The external funding side of stuff, and I think, yes, we could do more and we could do better on that. One area that I've been keeping an eye on is the Wicker Brownfield Housing Fund, and that's an area where we appear to be underperforming. We've got out of a total of 29 schemes in contract or approved or pending approval. Out of those 29 schemes, Kirklees has got 1, compared with Bradford with 6, Calderdale with 2, Leeds with 16 leads, and Wakefield with 4. So we appear to be underperforming there, and I wonder about how much of that reflects our general approach to external funding, and how much of that is maybe specifically about that area or our engagement with the combined authority. So I think that's an area which is being shown here, but it maybe I'd like to dig into that a wee bit deeper and find out a bit more about how we are approaching external funding, because that's some hard figures, and sometimes you don't often get hard figures to back up things that you feel, because a lot of us assert things, but it's good to see hard figures. There was the reference to it being a difficult time and turbulent, and obviously we've had changes on the council. We've got a lot of non-aligned and new councillors. And so that brings with it its own pressures, because the party structures that could be used and utilised to keep people in check, perhaps when required, are not as strong anymore. And so that's a challenge. It's also positive sometimes, because you've got a lot of free thinking out there, and people being able to express views that maybe they wouldn't have been able to do under the party structures. So that's good, but of course, if people don't understand their role because they're new, or because they've got a poor understanding of what being a councillor is, then I think that's a new challenge, and we've got to be aware to that. And one of the things I'd be really concerned about is if staff are not feeling comfortable about councillors and when councillors engage with them. We did this really positive thing a few years ago, which was where councillors sat down with frontline staff and we had a bit of a get-to-know-you session about what it means to be engaging with councillors and what you should expect and what you definitely shouldn't expect from that relationship. So I think more opportunities to have that sit-down time with frontline staff, and so we each understand each of our roles, and that we're all trying to do our best for the community. The longer-term horizon for key decisions. I'd like to see it a bit more about the long-term horizon for policy formulation, because when you get to a decision, you've more or less done, isn't it? But I think, particularly with the way the council is at the moment, maybe a bit more work around how we come to policies, how we get to decisions, and so policy formulation side of things is something I'd like to see a lot more of. Customer expectations, and I'm a big fan of councillors being a good way of being, I call it the canary in the coal mine, because when people come to us, something's usually not gone right with the system, and so I think maybe a piece of work could be done around some of the councillor enquiries work and seeing what we can do to capture why people come to councillors. Is it because the telephony was a bit unengaging or sent you to the wrong place? Was it because you found it difficult to find the right officer to talk to? Was it because you can't engage with the web system, and even if you did know, maybe somehow or other it wasn't able to deal with your query or your system? So I think that if you can get councillors to engage, and I know that brings its own challenges, I think a lot of it, I think we could learn a lot from that. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Cooper, for that list.
Thank you. Yeah, no, all really good points. So we'll take those away and talk to the relevant officers. I think we'll talk to the lead directors for each of the actions and make sure those are considered. I think the point you raised about new councillors, that's something that I know that the relevant director has been thinking about when we're thinking about that member development framework. Obviously, when we've got more newer councillors in the chamber, then that kind of changes the kind of support that's required. So I know that's already been considered, but I'll take that away and make sure it's been emphasised. And customer expectations, again, take that away. I think it's a good point that sometimes that people go to councillors because they haven't had the response, or they haven't had the response fast enough from a service, and so that's probably a really good data source. There's probably ways of getting some of that information without having to ask councillors directly as well, because we get the inquiries coming in obviously from councillors. So really helpful. The Wicker Brownfield funding, I don't know the details of that, but it's a fair question. Again, I'll take it away. I think there's probably a broader thing. There is one of the actions in there around being clear on our asks at a West Yorkshire level. As combined authorities become more powerful and have more powers through devolution, it will become even more important that we're clear on we're getting our fair share. So, and I don't know what's going on with this particular case, but we can go away and ask. And yes, local spend. We're thinking about we're planning a Kirklees economic summit, and it's one of the actions in the action plan, talking about our aspirations for growth of the Kirklees economy, and that will definitely be about local businesses as well. It won't just be about sort of external and national organisations.
Councillor Patterson.
Yeah, sorry, I'd just like to sort of add a little bit to what Stephen's just said there in response to those questions. In the Wicker funding, of course, there's swings and roundabouts on that, isn't there? I mean, I don't know the specifics about the brownfield, but certainly I know we in some areas from Wicker funding, we get more than perhaps our fair share, or it would seem to other people it was that. I don't think overall from Wicker funding that we're a particular loser in any shape or form, but certainly we'll have a look at the brownfield. I don't know the detail of that. Your point about party structures, yes, I mean there's pluses and minuses to that, aren't there? As we've seen over this last year, but certainly we've all learnt a lot that we need far more. I mean, and I think there used to be, and you will know, Andrew, how there used to be a lot more councillor support for than there is now. I mean, and that's been some of the cuts that we've had to face over the last 14 years that's produced the level of support that we've got now. But certainly, when we've got new councillors who are completely new to council representation, then we really need to think a bit more carefully about that. So, and again, I do, like you, remember sitting down with staff and having those conversations with frontline staff, and I've already spoken to officers about that and how that was a very useful exercise for both staff and for ourselves. So I think that is something that will certainly be built in to things in the coming months. And as the same with council expectations, I've already spoken to officers about that, and in terms of, I mean, I think they've, I think you also did have Rachel Spencer-Henshaw come to your group and talk to you about the your experience as councillors of, and she's certainly taken that sort of your response away, and responses from other groups, and from, and we'll be following that up in terms of why do, people come to members, is it a failing of our system, the organisation system, that is, as opposed to the things that we perhaps can really make a difference. When somebody comes to a councillor, it would be nice if it's something that we can really make a difference in terms of the way the council does approach its residents and needs to deal or provide something for residents that perhaps we haven't thought of rather than just having a pothole filled or fly tipping, etc. So many of those things, I mean, I don't disagree with you in any shape or form, but some of those are, I know, already ongoing. Thanks.
So just want to come back on growth, and I always think that growth is not really the objective of, it shouldn't be the objective of economic policy, because not all growth is good. There is growth which is bad for the environment, there's growth which is poor for society, there's growth. So there are negative forms of growth. So I just wonder whether we are going to have a strong angle on what sort of growth we're going to have. Is it going to be inclusive growth? Is it going to be sustainable growth? Is it, and so making sure that's at the top really of what we're trying to do. We've had growth. Well, yeah, but has anybody benefited? Is the world a better place? So I think we ought to have a strong handle on that to make sure that we people are actually getting a benefit from any increase in economic activity.
Yeah, I'll take that away and pass that to the team working on the strategy. It is the inclusive economy strategy, and it's not an inclusive growth strategy even. It's about the economy we want to support our wider ambitions. So there's stuff in there about skills gaps for certain groups in terms of supporting social outcomes. Obviously employment is a good route into positive well-being and health as well. So we're very mindful as well, I think, of how our activity as a council interlinks with those of partners. So if you think about the work going on with the Health Innovation Campus at the university, that supports regeneration in the town. It also supports health outcomes. So we are mindful of that as well. I'll take it away though and mention that you've raised it so that we just double check. But I'm pretty confident that's included in the draft.
I mean, a lot of these issues have been raised by colleagues, so I'll make sure I don't try and repeat them. I think what we also want to feel advantage of is where we are moving to less bidding rounds, and I think that legacy might take a while to get rid of in certain government departments. It still feels a bit of a legacy. That our longer term strategies are set out so that we've got that to hand. So the inclusive economy stuff that Stephen was making reference to in the summit and other stuff is then the document that you use to put in front of a bid, a policy, be it the combined authority, be it a wider geographical area, or even just in Kirklees. And I think there's both big and small things that we can do as part of that. Hence why there's going to be a lot of effort, and clearly that has been ongoing for quite some time in terms of that clue. There will be difference of opinion. Not everybody's got the same view of what good growth looks like in that definition, Andrew. So I think that's really useful. I guess for me, recommendation 8 is the pivotal one, and I feel for quite some time we've been just on the cusp of making a real big difference. And actually what we now want to do is the leap forward. So the Hour Council stuff that Stephen made reference to is about making sure that we put residents in the bit. Things have changed over the last 5 years. Money has come out of services. We don't do the same as we used to do 5 years ago, and we need to be clear with our residents what we do versus what we don't do. And no amount of banging on a councillor's door should be able to change some of those things. Now, other of those things where we aren't delivering what we say we should do, about getting the basics right, and again, Carol's made reference to it, absolutely. Design the system so it delivers better first time, so that councillors aren't having to be the canary in the mine, etc., flagging that stuff. That then does change the debate in terms of what is the role of the councillor. Actually, the role of the councillor as the community liaison is about flagging issues that we're not aware of. Flagging those issues in communities that aren't automatically coming up in those debates, and not just chasing, I've had 5 bins not collected this week, why haven't you done something about it? We should be aware of that. We should know what that information is, and we should have a dashboard ready for you guys to be able to look at, so that when somebody flags, my bin hasn't been collected, you go, well, I know. And if you look on such and such account, it says you've been emailed and it tells you they'll be collecting it within the next 24, 48 hours, etc. So that's the kind of interactions I want to be able to have and move towards, so that you're not chasing officers on stuff that, we should be doing a better job on. And actually what you're chasing us on, or what you're asking about, are things we don't know about. There's been an issue over here that we, as a community, we've come together and we wondered a way if we can solve X or Y or Z. Actually, those are the debates that we should be having more of, less, shall I say, transactional chasing of issues, which you end up being in the middle of very much at the moment. Thank you.
Just when we're speaking about the combined authority and the steps being taken, so it'd be good to know what steps have been taken to strengthen our voice within the combined authority, and how the council will then be able to demonstrate that to everybody else, and in particular about how we're securing our fair share, I suppose, of investment, and being able to see that. And then we mentioned Kirklees asks. Has that been defined? Has it been agreed and communicated?
So it's worth remembering that the asks are not all in 1 year. They spread out over time. So we make sure, so if you think about mass transit, which is very relevant at the moment, we are absolutely clear, myself, the leader, the policy officers who we've met with, directors of development, finance. So we've now formed a group of all people at an officer level and senior member level who are interacting with the combined authority on those. So we're all clear what those asks are. It's that kind of debates that we need to keep pushing on. I don't think, to be fair, Chair, we're clear on all those issues yet. So we know that we were looking for phase 2 as part of mass transit. We know where we are on the other programmes. I'll take your point on the brownfield one, because I think that does feel a little bit out of kilter. I think I could give you other examples, though, as the leader made reference to, where we've got more than, and I don't particularly like the word fair share, because not things, there are things that ebb and flow over a longer term period. What we need to make sure is that somebody is keeping a check of, we asked for X, Y, Z as part of our long-term strategic view, are we going to get that? When is that going to happen? So if you're not using that pot of money, and a single settlement becomes a lot clearer, You're not using that pot of money for it. When does that fall into that line? I'm going to say it again. Cooper Bridge is a long-term objective for this council. It's on the list. We keep bringing it forward. It is a massive game changer for the transport infrastructure in Kirklees, in all parts, linking south to north, linking to the motorway and all the other kind of stuff. That's the kind of example that from all angles we're kind of all pushing on that same piece of work to make sure it gets delivered in a meaningful timescale. It's challenging, and I think as more responsibility, as Stephen says, as more responsibilities, as we get into the stage 4 devolution for combined authorities, we'll be asking for more of that outcome kind of. And government are up for that. Government are saying, right, what do you need to be able to deliver on those long-term objectives as a West Yorkshire combined authority? And we've got to be ready to be able to respond to some of that, which we are. We just have to do it with our colleagues over time.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from committee members? I just think I think it was interesting to speak about the role of the councillor and how that's changed, and we can all look at our own experiences from when we've elected, looking at me from 2010, how things have changed and how we've done things differently, and how we speak about member development, how it used to be you had a dedicated person, you had that continual development as the year went on. It wasn't just at the beginning when you got elected and then just a refresher once a year. It was more of a continual thing throughout the year, so you were kept up to date and you had opportunities presented to you, so that kept you more informed and about what was going on, and then that helped in making decisions and how we did things. With the role of the councillors and what we do and what we don't do and what the council does and what it doesn't do, I think that needs to be really, really clearly defined so that residents understand. And I think we spend a lot of time speaking to residents and trying to outline and discuss with them and manage their expectations about what can and what can't be done. And that could be made easier. And I mentioned before, when it comes after budget time, looking at where the money is spent, is it spent on adult services, children's services? Because residents will have their own opinion about where the money is spent, and when they've got an issue, they'll expect that's where their money is spent, whether it's on a bin collection, and for others it will be around adult social care or children's services. We do, I think, find ourselves in the middle of a lot of things that happen, and when council inquiries, I think there's a lot of data that could be got from that to see what the issues are, what are the main things that are brought up in particular areas, what are the themes, and what can we work on to try and improve that as well, so that we're not just a go-between or the first port of call, really. So if we've got the infrastructure in place to make it easier for residents, it should relieve some of that pressure where we're not just managing a little bit of casework. Potholes not being filled, and that's what we're chasing all the time. But I do understand some of the frustrations with residents when they're not getting communication, I suppose, is a big issue. And I can see that certainly when residents communicate with us and say we've not heard anything back, and then we will then put an inquiry in and we experience the exact same issue. And it's how that we can try and resolve that. So that'll be helpful, I think, the role of the councillor, the role of the council, what we do and what we don't do, and what we can try and help and assist with. Any other questions or comments? Okay, so and also thank you, Stephen, for taking into account the feedback that's been provided previously, and we had that meeting previously, and that's been included, which is really, really helpful. So we'd like to thank you for your attendance, that the action plan be noted and the points raised by the committee be considered in delivery of the actions. We know the action plan will be submitted to Cabinet for approval on the 8th of April and then to Council for noting on the 23rd of April. And a further report will be submitted to this committee to provide an update on progress in summer 25, and that further information will be provided to members in relation to the Brownfield Housing Fund as well. Thank you very much. Thank you. Item 12, lead members' updates. Who would like to go first? Councillor Lawson, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Since the last update I've actually given is adult health and social care, we've looked at the joined-up approach of hospital discharges, not looking at what the NHS does, what Kirklees actually does. We've also had reports on the financial briefings from Locala and the various trusts that also cover Kirklees, And we've also, obviously, we had the call in January regarding the sale of the dementia care homes. And we're actually, for our next meeting, we're finally getting sort of dental, so we can go back to look at what is holding back, especially the children's dental services. And we've also had some informal, I've had some informal briefings with all the relevant providers. One actually was with Health Watch, which from the back of that, they then sent out an email to all councillors, again, to just say, this is what we can actually do, because we actually had a rather long conversation with them and realised actually they were probably sort of underutilised, or that we as councillors didn't know about them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lawson, for the update. Councillor Cooper.
I've been looking at a number of areas. Public space protection orders is an issue which is pretty high on the agenda at the moment, and the input I think that we gave to that was about the need to join up with not just, if you like, an enforcement point of view, but actually the support services that we might be able to direct people to who are vulnerable or give challenging behaviour sometimes in our town centres. So that the need for that stronger link up, because that wasn't really there, I think, in the initial report. We've had an update from Highways and Highway Safety and Vision Zero, and that was interesting. We asked about things like 20-mile-per-hour limits, and the fact that 20-mile-per-hour limits without enforcement or necessarily road safety measures had worked in Wales. And so, looking at looking at what had worked in Wales and seeing if we could, how we could apply that in Kirklees, England more generally. But it sort of goes against what's happened in Wales with blanket 20-mile-per-hours in residential areas has been shown to have a very positive impact, and so that does fly in the face of the conventional wisdom locally. So we asked folks to have a look at that. Emergency planning was the last thing we looked at as an informal item, looking at the council's approach to emergency planning and the processes that we go through, how we engage with partners. That's going to be coming to a future committee. So, yeah, fairly busy.
Thank you, Councillor Cooper. It's worth noting, I suppose, the Vision Zero and how we're doing that as an authority, working with the other regional authorities, because it's a joined-up approach to try and achieve those objectives. Thank you both for that. Item 13, Overview and Scrutiny Management Committee Work Programme 24-25 is there for noting. Unless there's any comments, we're working through that. Obviously, agenda item 7 from today will be brought to the next meeting on the 9th of May. Is that it? Yeah. And that is all for today. So thank you all for your attendance, your contributions. Thank you.